Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be sharing with you some recommendations for books set in the 1960s. I'm not particularly someone who is into historical fiction in the 1960s, to be quite honest. Now, when I did pick out 10 books for this list, there were definitely a few in here that I was like, okay, that sounds really good. I tend to really gravitate towards mostly a lot of times European history set in the 1500s and 1600s and 1800s and stuff like that. So yeah, the 1960s is definitely kind of not like my preferred area of historical fiction, let's be real. But yeah, like I said, many of these books sound pretty great, pretty awesome, and I definitely need to add some of them. So you guys, I'm going to be looking down here at my computer. If you see my eyes drifting downwards, I'm reading off the Goodreads synopsises for all of these books. So yeah, I definitely highly recommend, if you want to kind of read along with me and add any of these books to your own Goodreads, definitely go ahead and pull that up right now. So yeah, let's get going. First up, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And this is probably kind of one of the most popular books at the moment that takes place in the 1960s. I do own this book. I do need to get around to it. For years, rumors of the Marsh Girl haunted Barkley Cove, a quiet fishing village. Kaya Clark is barefoot and wild, unfit for polite society. So in late 1969, when the popular Chase Andrews is found dead, locals immediately suspect her. But Kaya is not what they say. A born naturalist with just one day of school, she takes life's lessons from the land, learning the real ways of the world from the dishonest signals of fireflies. But while she has the skills to live in solitude forever, the time comes when she yearns to be touched and loved. Drawn to two young men from town who are each intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new and startling world until the unthinkable happens. Oh, what? Yeah, what happens? What happens? I'm trying to know. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Elwood Curtis has taken the words of Dr. Martin Luther King to heart. He is as good as anyone. Abandoned by his parents, brought up by his loving, strict, and clear-sighted grandmother, Elwood is about to enroll in the local black college. But given the time and the place, one innocent mistake is enough to destroy his future. And so Elwood arrives at the Nickel Academy, which claims to provide physical, intellectual, and moral training, which will equip its inmates to become honorable and honest men. In reality, the Nickel Academy is a chamber of horrors where physical, emotional, and sexual abuse is rife, where corrupt officials and tradesmen do a brisk trade in supplies intended for the school, and where any boy who resists is likely to disappear out back. But Elwood's fellow inmate and new friend Turner thinks Elwood is naive and worse. The world is crooked, and the only way to survive is to emulate the cruelty and cynicism of their oppressors. Ooh, sounds good too. Looking for Jack Kerouac by Barbara Shoup. In 1964, Paul discovers Jack Kerouac's On the Road while on a school trip to New York and begins to question the life he faces after high school. When he meets a volatile, charismatic Kerouac devotee determined to hit the road himself. When the boys learn that Kerouac is living in St. Petersburg, Florida, they go looking for answers. Yeah, a very brief plot summary of this. It seems like it's a coming-of-age story between two young men who have a similar passion in Jack Kerouac's works, I guess. And yeah, going on this road trip, it sounds like to go meet Jack Kerouac. Next up, The Help by Catherine Stockett. Yes, a very controversial book, but it still takes place in the 1960s, and that's why it's on this list. 22-year-old Skeeter has just returned home after graduating from Ole Miss. She may have a degree, but it is 1962 Mississippi, and her mother will not be happy till Skeeter has a ring on her finger. Skeeter would normally find solace with her beloved maid, Constantine, the woman who raised her, but Constantine has disappeared, and no one will tell Skeeter where she has gone. Abilene is a black maid, a wise, regal woman raising her 17th white child. Something has shifted inside her after the loss of her own son, who died while his bosses looked the other way. She is devoted to the little girl she looks after, though she knows both their hearts may be broken. Minnie, Abilene's best friend, is short, fat, and perhaps the sassiest woman in Mississippi. She can cook like nobody's business, but she can't mind her tongue, so she's lost yet another job. Minnie finally finds a position working for someone too new to town to know her reputation, but her new boss has secrets of her own. Seemingly seemingly as different from one another as can be, these women will nonetheless come together for a clandestine project that will put them all at risk. And why? Because they are suffocating within the lines that define their town and their times. And sometimes lines are made to be crossed. Hell yes. 11/22/63 by Stephen King. On November 22nd, 1963, three shots rang out in Dallas. President Kennedy died, and the world changed. Unless, in 2011, Jake Epping, an English teacher from Lisbon Falls, Maine, sets out on an insane and insanely possible mission to prevent the Kennedy assassination. Leaving behind a world of computers and modern phones, he goes back to a time of big American cars and diners, of Lindy hopping, the sound of Elvis, and the taste of root beer. In this haunting world, Jake falls in love with Sadie, a beautiful high school librarian, and as the ominous date of 11/22/63 approaches, he encounters a troubled loner named Lee Harvey Oswald. Yes. So if you can't tell, this is kind of like some historical fiction time traveling sort of thing. A modern man going back into 1963 to prevent the Kennedy assassination, you guys. It sounds great. On Chesil Beach by Ian McEwan. It is July 1962. Florence is a talented musician who dreams of a career on the concert stage and of the perfect life she will create with Edward, an earnest young history student at University College of London, who unexpectedly wooed and won her heart. Newly married that morning, both virgins, Edward and Florence, arrive at a hotel on the Dorset coast. At dinner in their rooms, they struggle to suppress their worries about the wedding night to come. Edward, eager for rapture, frets over Florence's response to his advances and nurses a private fear of failure. While Florence's anxieties run deeper, she is overcome by sheer disgust at the idea of physical contact, but dreads disappointing her husband when they finally lie down together in the honeymoon suite. Ooh, that sounds pretty intriguing, you guys. The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. This is a classic. Let's see. 14-year-old Lily Owen, neglected by her father and isolated on their Georgia peach farm, spends hours imagining a blissful infancy when she was loved and nurtured by her mother, Deborah, whom she barely remembers. These consoling fantasies are her heart's answer to the family story that as a child, in unclear circumstances, Lily accidentally shot and killed her mother. Dear God. All Lily has left of Deborah is a strange image of a Black Madonna with the words Tiburon, South Carolina, scrawled on the back. The search for a mother and the need to mother oneself are crucial elements in this well-written coming-of-age story set in the early 1960s against a backdrop of racial violence and unrest. When Lily's beloved nanny, Rosalind, manages to insult a group of angry white men on their way to register to vote and has to skip town, Lily takes the opportunity to go with her, fleeing to the only place she can think of, Tiburon, South Carolina. Next up, The Girls by Emma Cline. Northern California during the violent end of the 1960s. At the start of summer, a lonely and thoughtful teenager, Evie Boyd, sees a group of girls in the park and is immediately caught by their freedom, their careless dress, their dangerous aura of abandon. Soon Evie is enthralled to Suzanne, a mesmerizing older girl, and is drawn into the circle of a soon-to-be infamous cult, and the man who is its charismatic leader. Hidden in the hills, their sprawling ranch is eerie and run down, but to Evie it is exotic, thrilling, charged, a place where she feels desperate to be accepted. As she spends more time away from her mother and the rhythms of her daily life, and as her obsession with Suzanne intensifies, Evie does not realize she is coming closer and closer to unthinkable violence, and to that moment in a girl's life when everything can go horribly wrong. And yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is alluding to like the Manson murders. Yeah, guys, dear God. Next up, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. And this was most recently released just last year. Chemist Elizabeth Zott is not your average woman. In fact, Elizabeth Zott would be the first to point out that there's no such thing as an average woman. But in the early 1960s, and her all-male team at Hastings Research Institute takes a very unscientific view of equality, except for one, Calvin Evans, the lonely, brilliant Nobel Prize-nominated grudge holder who falls in love with, of all things, her mind. True chemistry results. But like science, life is unpredictable, which is why a few years later, Elizabeth Zott finds herself not only a single mother, but the reluctant star of America's most beloved cooking show, Supper at Six. Elizabeth's unusual approach to cooking proves revolutionary, but as her following grows, not everyone is happy because, as it turns out, Elizabeth Zott isn't just teaching women to cook, she's daring them to change the status quo. Ooh. And the last book that I have here, The Royal Correspondent by Alexandra Joel. Breaking into the newspaper business in 1960s Sydney, a competitive world dominated by hard-edged men, isn't easy for a woman. But Blaise Hill is far from ordinary. The only female in the Clarion's newsroom, her long-held dream of being a reporter has come true. Blaise isn't chasing stories just to make a name for herself. She's helping support her family and her beloved sister Ivy, whose life has been transformed by polio. But the ambitious young journalist's confidence is shaken when she secretly witnesses the murder of a top crime boss, a death that rocks the Sydney underworld. One of the few people who knows what really happened, and what Blaise knows, is the handsome, enigmatic Adam Rule, who helps cover up the murder. When she gets a plum assignment moving to England to cover the British royal family, Blaise hopes to put it all behind her. Carving her own path among the scandal and intrigue of the swinging 60s in London, life is just about perfect until the night she attends Queen Elizabeth's gala in honor of the upcoming nuptials of Princess Margaret and Anthony Armstrong Jones. Among the exclusive crowd is the last man she ever wanted to see, Adam Rule. Ooh, this sounds great. I have this book too, and I can't wait to get to it. So, you guys, that is it for all my recommendations for historical fiction set in the 1960s. I definitely want to continue this in the future and do some other decades. I definitely would like to explore like the 1970s and 1980s and probably go back a little bit further and whatnot. If there's a specific decade you would like me to touch on, just let me know. So yeah, any of these books that you guys have read and enjoyed, just let me know. Or yeah, do you plan on reading any of these? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.